Welcome back. Joining us now at our primary headquarters here in Manchester, New Hampshire, CNN political analyst, former Clinton White House press secretary Mike McCurry, and former Gingrich press secretary Tony Blankley. Mike, you've been with winners, you've been with losers over your career.
I prefer the former.
It's better to be with winners. If you're giving some advice to George W. Bush tonight, and if our tracking poll from last night and all the other tracking polls that were released show that he possibly could lose to John McCain, what advice would you give to someone like George W. Bush tonight if, in fact, he winds up losing?
Well, you know, sometimes losing is not a bad thing. If you're a candidate that needs to establish who you are with the American people, remember, we're going into a period now where people are finally going to pay attention to this campaign. After New Hampshire, really, the window opens and people begin to take this race seriously. This is a moment for George Bush to demonstrate some gravitas. If he gets knocked off the horse tonight, and you know, he's got to get himself up, dust himself off, and ride on. And it's, in a way, an opportunity if he takes a knocking from McCain. Of course, the problem is it's a great opportunity for John McCain, right?
It's an opportunity, but the next several days are going to be the critical days in the Bush campaign. They have to decide. They have to pivot. The campaign that they're running is not working, and they have to pivot to something else. And they're going to be working through, already talking with people in Washington this afternoon. You're hearing advice that's being thrown into the Bush camp about, you know, how to go more aggressively, change the style. So we're going to have to be watching closely to see what happens the next few days, because the Republicans have the campaigns coming up in the next several weeks, where the Democrats have 5 weeks before their next campaign.
Well, congressional Republicans are going to get a little nervous now because they can't have that guaranteed top of the ticket, that strength that lifts all the boats for them. They're going to start wondering whether they should hedge their bets. I thought it was interesting today, we haven't talked about it, that Trent Lott and Denny Hastert were down at the White House to do the annual Let's Meet with the President and See What We Can Get Done meeting today. My guess is they may start thinking maybe we should try to put some legislative achievements on the record so that we have our incumbents have something to run something.
Well, of course, that brings back the remembrance of the 1996 campaign that you and I were involved in from the inside, where the Republicans decided to give the welfare bill to Clinton, and the question is, did that help Clinton or did it help the Republicans? So I think, you know, one thing we want to watch, I think, also is how the surprise the people in Washington are. Within the last 48 hours, there was expectation in Republican circles that Bush was going to win. That is resulting in shock there this afternoon.
And on the Democratic side, Mike, the Gore-Bradley race, the polls show going into today, the polls were showing that Gore was ahead, but it was still relatively close. These two candidates are indicating it's not over with by any means. They're going to go to New York and California. It's going to they're both going to have to spend a lot of money now.
Yes, you know, in a way, I think tonight is going to be a metaphor for what's coming ahead in the campaign. It's going to be a long time before we have an actual result that we can be certain of. And I think this campaign is going to go on for a while. The real danger for both the Vice President and for Senator Bradley is we Democrats go in kind of a black hole now. There really isn't much on our calendar until March 7th, which in effect is a national primary. Over on the Republican side, Tony, you're going to have quite a story develop, I think.
Yeah, I mean, Bradley is going to have his considerable war chest, whatever it is, $15–20 million to spend in California and New York over the next 5 weeks, and that's where that part of the campaign is going.
And Bradley is strong in New York, given the fact that he was an NBA star in New York, and California's got a lot of support in Silicon Valley.
Well, I strongly suspect Senator Bradley is going to be there all the way through to the convention in Los Angeles. I think that's why it's especially important for both these candidates to be careful how they go at each other. They got down and dirty a little bit towards the end of this campaign here in New Hampshire.
Is that real or is that show? Do you think there is real animosity?
Well, it's all compared to what? I mean, we've seen some nasty campaigns before. I don't know that this qualifies as being pretty tame. In fact, for large measure, Vice President Gore, Senator Bradley have been debating health care, education, issues that I think are very much on the mind of voters. If they keep that up and keep it substantive, it could be pretty attractive compared to what's going on the other side.
The fact is that in the Democratic primary here in New Hampshire, it appears that negative campaigning worked. When Gore went negative on Bradley, he took him down. When Bradley went negative on Gore, he started closing the gap. So negativity works even though the electorate says they don't want to have negativity.
I think it's a question of how negative. And I think if it gets too personal and too nasty, I think voters, and especially Democratic leaders like Tom Daschle and Dick Gephardt, as they've already done, they're going to kind of put down a marker and say, hey, let's be careful about the tonal quality of this debate.
Because the real debate will come with the Republicans down the road. Mike McCurry, Tony Blankley, always good to have you on Inside Politics, especially on a special Inside Politics. And coming up next, our Bruce Morton takes a look at New Hampshire's place in political history. But first, we'll check in with Stuart Varney for the latest in financial news.
Hit and run, steal third, steal home. You can't avoid risk altogether, but you can try managing it by doing things the right way. At Oppenheimer Funds, they understand that.
Oppenheimer Funds, the right way to invest.
They've grown beans into one of the world's hottest businesses. Which professional services firm serves Starbucks coffee? The answer is Deloitte & Touche. They've built more jetliners than all other manufacturers combined. Which professional services firm goes above and beyond for Boeing? The answer is Deloitte & Touche.
In any business, there can be only one priority. At Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, we have never forgotten ours. Not surprisingly, we measure success a little differently.
You already know the best actors, the best comedians, the best stunt people, and the best costume designers. Hey, maybe you should be a director. Desktop Movies, now premiering on an iMac near you.
I talked to my daughter about money. She should know that building for the future takes planning and good, solid investments. That's why I have Oppenheimer Funds.
Oppenheimer Funds, the right way to invest.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stuart Varney, and topping tonight's business headlines. Yes, another late-day rally on Wall Street. Stocks followed up on yesterday's strong run-up with more broad-based gains. But all in all, it was a rather quiet session, with many investors opting out of the action the day before an expected decision on the future of interest rates. Fred Katayama is live at the New York Stock Exchange with more on all of this. Fred?
Thanks, Stuart. Volume was relatively light today as Wall Street awaited word from Fed policymakers. Still, the rally was encouraging. The Dow, NASDAQ, and S&P were all higher for the second day in a row, the first time that's happened in 2.5 weeks. The Dow jumped 100 to 11,041, building on yesterday's 200-plus gain. Volume on the big board, 980 million shares. Winners beat out losers by a ratio of nearly 4 to 3. 31 stocks hit new highs, 130 new lows. A much bigger gain for the NASDAQ today, up 111 or 2.8% to 4051. Volume there, 1.4 billion shares. NASDAQ winners included Qualcomm, up after it signed a deal with China's #2 telecom company. And Cisco surged more than 8.25, helping the NASDAQ and the Dow. Microsoft, up more than 5. Big gains for blue-chip retailers Walmart and Home Depot as well. Stuart?
All right, Fred Katayama, thank you. But next question is, what is going to happen tomorrow on Wall Street? A lot will ride on what happens in Washington as the Fed concludes its first rate-setting meeting of the new century. As Alan Greenspan headed into that meeting today, most economists agree that the Fed will indeed raise the benchmark interest rate. But will it raise it by a quarter point, that's 25 basis points, or a half point? And that's a key question that investors want answered.
I wish they would go to 50 basis points tomorrow and then say that that's going to be it for a while, maybe a considerable period of time. But I don't really think that Mr. Greenspan will do that. I think he'll raise them 0.25% probably, and then everybody will be worried what he's going to do at the next meeting.
The last time policymakers raised the federal funds rate was November. That's what banks charge other banks for overnight loans, by the way, and that rate now stands at 5.5%. The prime rates, that's what banks charge their best customers, that stands at 8.5%. Now to the bond market, which today showed little hesitation ahead of tomorrow's Fed meeting. After falling initially on strong economic reports, the 30-year Treasury ended the day up 25/30 seconds, and that pushed the yield down to 6.42%. While the fate of interest rates is unclear, the fate of Alan Greenspan's professional future is not. The Senate Banking Committee approved his nomination for a 4th term as Fed chairman by a unanimous voice vote. Mr. Greenspan is expected to win quick approval from the full Senate as early as Thursday. In Detroit today, a decision by GM on the fate of Hughes Electronics. The company says it has no plans for a complete spin-off of the communications and wireless company, but it will reduce its stake by exchanging about $8 billion worth of the Hughes tracking stock for GM's common stock. Hughes, by the way, is a faster-growing business and has a richer stock. No surprise, then, that GM stock jumped more than 4 3/4 points on this news, and Hughes was up 2 1/4 points. Meanwhile, January was another good month for GM's auto sales. Despite heavy winter storms in the East and Midwest, car and truck sales at the #1 automaker jumped 12%. Ford also higher, recording a 5% sales increase, with domestic and import car lines delivering the strongest performances. However, business dropped off for Daimler Chrysler. Sales there down 5.9% last month. A record 4th quarter at Sprint, not enough to boost its stock price today. The long-distance phone company blew past Wall Street profit estimates by 9 cents a share, but net income inched up just 3% on revenues of nearly $4.5 billion. Earlier on CNN-FN, Sprint's chief executive predicted a bright year 2000.
I think the telecom companies sort of span between the new economy and the old economy. And if you look at the way Sprint and our to-be merged partner WorldCom are positioned, we're positioned in all the fast-growing areas, wireless and data and the internet. So I think you'll see companies like ours do quite well over the course of the year.
Fair enough, but investors seem more impressed by the results from its wireless business, that's Sprint PCS. Despite a wider-than-expected loss, the company said revenues more than doubled to just under $1 billion. Now, here's Wall Street's reaction to all of this. Sprint stock down more than 1.25 points today, while Sprint PCS gained 1 3/4. That's it for this abbreviated edition of Moneyline. We'll see you back here at 11:30 p.m. Eastern with a complete wrap-up of today's financial news. This special edition of Inside Politics and the New Hampshire primary continues right after this break.
Tonight's Sectors Report is brought to you by the communication industry professionals at KPMG. KPMG, it's time for clarity.
My buddies and I are trying to take better care of ourselves. Now, okay, maybe our wives are making us. So last night I picked up these buffalo wings from Morningstar Farms. They're made from vegetables and grains. Hey, let's see what happens when I tell them. Hey guys, did you know these are meat-free?
Which is the bigger surprise? How good they are, or how good they are for you? Morningstar Farms. Enjoy eating better.
I don't know, like 5 o'clock.
Oh, hello. You know what? Let me call you back. Hi. You know what they're doing in there?
I beg your pardon?
Williams is trading energy on this trading floor.
Really?
Yeah, cubic feet, wattage, barrels.
This must be where Williams manages energy risks, too, monitoring weather, wars.
Yeah.
That must be how Williams moves energy more efficiently.
Whatever.
I guess that's how Williams fuels America and our economy.
Okay.
And this must be the door for authorized personnel.
Miss you. Adieu, mi amor.
Virginia is for business. 4 years, costs up 40% over the next 5. Somebody do the math here.
It'd be great if our money would grow as fast as these kids. I can't believe
Will paying for college be as painful as this? Let's get rid of it.
Hey, that kid just dropped a pretzel? Because I like pretzels. I really like
We'll be able to help with their education.
I wonder if we should have put that money in a trust. Maybe we would have...
I hope she was kidding about college in Hawaii.
Thank you, Payne Weber.
New Hampshire's primary status has long been a political tradition. Our Bruce Morton, who's covered many presidential races here, takes a look back now at some of the most enduring moments in the primary's history.
New Hampshire, snow, scenery, and the first primary going back to 1952 when Dwight Eisenhower defeated conservative Robert Taft and went on to the White House. Drama? How about 1964 when William Loeb, angry publisher of the angry Manchester Union leader, blasted Nelson Rockefeller as a wife swapper. Rockefeller had remarried.
They really blasted him all the way through, and by the end the voters got so tired with both he and Goldwater that they wrote in Henry Cabot Lodge, who was the ambassador to South Vietnam and never gotten closer than about 6,000 miles away.
Democratic frontrunner Ed Muskie in 1972 responding to a William Loeb attack on Muskie's wife Jane. Did he cry? Hard to tell in the snow.
A good woman.
It became the symbol of Muskie's indecisiveness, and would he be tough enough? The Nixon people used that very effectively.
George McGovern became the nominee and carried one state against Nixon. In 1980, George Bush won Iowa. The Nashua newspaper sponsored and the Reagan campaign paid for a Reagan-Bush debate. The other candidates showed up and wanted to play too. The moderator tried to cut off Reagan's microphone.
George Bush sitting there like an errant schoolboy caught sneaking a smoke in the gym, and the Gipper saying,
I am paying for this microphone, Mr.
Vintage. Got the man's name wrong, and the line is from an old Spencer Tracy movie, but it worked.
The day of the primary, Reagan fired his entire upper campaign echelon.
A penalty for losing him Iowa. 1984, when Gary Hart, a distant second in Iowa, beat Walter Mondale here as other campaigns collapsed. 1988, when Bob Dole asked a TV interviewer to tell George Bush to stop lying about my record. And Bush launched negative ads.
What was a 6-point lead Saturday morning turned into a 9-point win for George Bush on Tuesday night.
New Hampshire is, no doubt about it, a special place with a special purpose.
New Hampshire really is a place where the underdog can sort of get his hands on the lapels of the front runner and just shake him up a bit.
This is a place where you get a chance to try it out. We're like New Haven to Broadway. We're a place to let you come in early and try out the act.
Whatever it does, it isn't like any place else. Bruce Morton, CNN, Manchester, New Hampshire.
And joining us once again, CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield. Jeff?
Yes, Wolf, we're going to turn to tonight's primary with a huge sense of relief, because now that real voters are casting real ballots, it brings to an end an exercise in mass hysteria that is the political equivalent of Hell Week. Every night, new polls, sometimes directly contradicting other polls, sometimes completely reversing the polls from the night before. And each new poll demands new explanations. Bush is winning back Republicans. No, McCain is appealing to them. Bradley waited too long to answer Gore. No, it was a brilliant exercise in strategic timing. And mixed in with these polls, an overdose of half-baked information. The guy in the Secretary of State's office says turnout will be huge. I hear the Democrats in Nashua are split. Keyes had a big crowd in Nashua. And all through today, reporters and politicians swapping the same exit poll numbers, never reported to you, the public, for fear it would influence your vote or your decision to vote, but chewed to death by us. Are early exit polls sometimes misleading? Yes. Did it stop us? Please. Now, what we report will be actual, real, honest-to-goodness votes. Yes, we will pick them to death. Yes, we will draw lessons of interplanetary significance for the votes of this one small state, but at least we'll be talking not about guesses or hunches, but about real votes. Until tomorrow morning. I hear the mood among South Carolina Republicans is mixed. We'll be back after this.
Reports Best of the Caribbean, AAA's 4 Diamond Award, Condé Nast Traveler's Top 10, Travel and Leisure's 1999 World's Best List, super luxurious, super inclusive, Grand Lido Resorts. Apparently, this must be where travel critics go on vacation. Call 1-800-GO-SUPER.
We're a new kind of data internet company. We move at internet speed. Broadway.
Tonight on the Emmy Award-winning Larry King Live.
We'll be live at 9 and again at midnight with the latest from New Hampshire, only on CNN.
Let CNBC energize your investments. Enter CNBC's Dividend Sweepstakes and be eligible to win the national grand prize of $10,000, the local first prize of $1,000, or a set of Wall Street Journal financial guidebooks. Enter CNBC's Dividend Sweepstakes and profit from it.
Enter to win at Freeman Wellwood Discount Stockbrokers in Portland, 121 Southwest Morrison. Call 1-888-607-FREE.
Congress has recently authorized the U.S. Mint to create a commemorative quarter to honor all 50 states. A limited quantity, 5-state collection will be minted first. And now, Collector's Mint, the trusted name in coin collecting, has been authorized to create an uncirculated collector's edition. You could reserve this magnificent 5-coin commemorative set, all for only $29.95. Each coin in this collection features an historic state event and crest, and is beautifully displayed and protected in this collector's plaque. You'll also get a full-color 50-state factbook. These coins will only be minted for 10 weeks. Reserve your piece of history today. Sorry, due to the limited quantity, only credit cards can be honored. Call now to reserve your coin set for only $29.95. To order, call 1-800-242-4200. That's 1-800-242-4200.
Oh no, I forgot Valentine's Day!
Don't panic. This year, give her beautiful silk roses that last a lifetime. Forever Roses for only $19.95. Forever Roses are delivered in a florist box filled with a dozen of the finest silk roses and a personalized greeting card, all for just $19.95. Call today and we'll include a second dozen absolutely free, and we guarantee delivery for Valentine's Day. To order Forever Roses, call 1-800-257-5700. That's 1-800-257-5700.
Sports Tonight with Fred and Vince, 11 Eastern on CNN.
Joining me now are our anchor team for tonight's primary coverage, Bernard Shaw and Judy Woodruff, and once again, CNN senior analyst Jeff Greenfield. Bernie, you've been through this so many times. What goes through your mind now, only minutes before you and Judy will be telling our audience what we've learned in the course of today?
The heightened level of excitement and anticipation compared to previous New Hampshire campaigns.
And Judy, how do you prepare for this kind of day?
Well, there's really no way to prepare, Wolf. I mean, every election is different. Every candidate is different. All you can do is, talk to as many people in the campaigns as you can. Try to talk to the folks who follow the campaigns, and then hope you're ready when we go on the air.
Do a lot of homework. All right, stand by. In just a couple of minutes, most of the polls here close, bringing an end to this unique ritual of presidential politics. Before we get to the results, one last look at the fight in the first-in-the-nation primary, as witnessed by our cameras and recorded by our microphones, with a little musical help from the students of Woodbury Elementary School in Bedford, New Hampshire.
If you support medical marijuana,
my question concerns,
will you hire qualified men and women?
what is the one most compelling reason that I should vote for you?
Thank you for asking that question.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you. That is an excellent question. So I would prefer to duck.
FDR and JFK, Reagan, Johnson, Lincoln, ran our country very well by using their persuasion.
And the harder you work, the more money you get to keep under President George Bush.
I want to fight for your families.
I want to fight for your communities.
Give government back, take it away from the hands of the special interests.
I'm not going to settle for nickel and diming on gun control.
I'm tired of us being played for suckers.
This endorsement is a heck of a milestone in this campaign. Very, very significant. And as the kids would say, I am pumped.
Campaigning for every vote I can get.
You don't have a spill yet.
I've been here so many times, they know my regular orders.
Do I like the snow? I do like the snow.
Very nice meeting you, sir.
Hi, guys. How are you?
This is Jeb and George.
Do I have some boots? I do have some boots, but I don't have my boots on today.
I thought you were television.
Thank you.
I thought you were television.
You did?
Me?
Kids aren't all the same.
Leadership experience and working hard are all Jefferson, he had it all. He was one of a kind. Being around it is the best. To be elected. Just like Thomas Jefferson, it helps to be elected.
Hey, guys.
Thank you.
From Manchester, New Hampshire, this is CNN's coverage of the New Hampshire primary with Judy Woodruff, Bernard Shaw, and Jeff Greenfield.
Our first call tonight is that the Arizonan John McCain has dug out a victory in the snows of New Hampshire. Based on CNN exit polling, by the time everything is counted, CNN projects that John McCain will be an easy winner tonight over Texas Governor George Bush. Trailing far behind tonight, Steve Forbes, Alan Keyes, and even farther, Gary Bauer.
On the Democratic side of this contest, it is a very different story. At this hour, based on exit polling, too close to call. Still a close race between Vice President Al Gore and former New Jersey Senator Bill Bradley. This is one that we could be watching for quite some time, and we will be watching it. Bernie and I are here in our studios in Manchester, New Hampshire, joined by our colleague analyst Jeff Greenfield. Jeff, the big story, though, has to be John McCain beating Governor Bush.
Once again, the Republican Party continues a 20-year tradition of taking the front runner and hitting him upside the head in one of the early contests. What Bush's father did to Reagan in '80, what Dole did to Bush in the Iowa caucuses, once again, and this story is even bigger because of the way that John McCain has campaigned.
Jeff, does this mean that as we look at the political context of this race tonight, George Bush is not so apparently the heir?
I think we're going to have to wait for South Carolina. He still is the favorite, but this, to use our first sports analogy of the evening, in the opening round, the underdog challenger has connected.
The aura of invincibility that surrounded George Bush literally right up until tonight, has begun to be chipped away at, though. Wouldn't you have to say that, Jeff?
Well, it's a free country, so I wouldn't have to say it.
You can say whatever you want to say. That's right.
I think we're going to have to wait to South Carolina, but clearly our call that this is not going to be simply a win, but an easy win against the heir apparent of the Republican Party is a heck of an interesting story for the opening round.
Let's analyze how the man from Arizona did this. For example, McCain out-campaigned George Bush in this state more than 2-1.
That's right. And one of the reasons why I'm a little hesitant to draw sweeping conclusions from what is undeniably a dramatic story is that John McCain ran a one-state campaign while George W. Bush was running a multi-state campaign. But still, it's not just that he won, and according to our estimates, he will win big, but he won with a kind of unusual campaign. This idea of going to 114 town meetings, putting everything on the record, gave him not only an aura of the underdog, but almost a kind of Hollywood style of Spencer Tracy see in State of the Union. And I think for the next couple of days, this is going to be the big story in American politics because it upsets the assumptions.
But you're right about the one-state strategy. 114 town meetings, 73 days by last count in this state. A remarkable effort John McCain has put in. All right, we want to go now to the headquarters of the man who has to be a little disappointed tonight, Texas Governor George W. Bush. They're our own Candy Crowley. Candy, you're talking to them, I know, at this hour.
Judy, aides to George Bush have known since mid-afternoon that they were going to lose this. That's when they started writing what will amount to a concession speech. You will hear congratulations to John McCain for running a very fine race here, but you will also hear what Jeff was just alluding to about this 50-state strategy. You will hear from this governor that there are more states to go, that this is a bump in the road, and it's a long road which he expects to end at the White House. Win, lose, or draw, the Bush strategy here really was modeled around the strategy he had when he ran for Texas governor against a very tough opponent the first time. There, the strategy was simple. Don't get riled and stick to the message. For better or for worse, that's what he did here in New Hampshire.
2 words, tax cuts.
I worry about money sitting around in Washington.
A traditional Republican issue, tax cuts are the core strategy in the Bush primary campaign.
I believe if there's extra money in Washington, the way to properly spend it is to give it to the people who pay the bills.
But New Hampshire voters tell pollsters they favor John McCain's smaller tax plan, his emphasis on Social Security and debt reduction, and they favor Steve Forbes' flat tax most of all. But Bush stuck with his plan and turned up the rhetoric.
Come on, I think it's important for our party to nominate somebody who's running for president, who will have a tax cut plan that stands in stark contrast to the Clinton and Gore people, not somebody who sounds exactly like them.
The strategy behind the strategy is arithmetic. There are 48 states beyond New Hampshire.
I intend to have a plan from the beginning of this campaign that, should I be the nominee, is going to be the plan at the end of the campaign. It's a plan that says we're going to cut the taxes on everybody who pays taxes, not a favored few.
The fact is that Bush strategists believe beyond New Hampshire that tax plan has some real resonance, and they do not believe that John McCain has either the money or the core support from Republicans that he will need to take advantage of a bounce out of here. A little earlier today, George Bush was asked what he'd like. He'd said a little warmer climate. He gets that. He, of course, is headed for South Carolina. Of course, the McCain camp has an entirely different view of how they can take advantage of this night. For that, we go to my colleague John Carl at McCain headquarters.
Well, Candy, the McCain camp has been smelling victory all day, and I just spoke to John McCain, and he said that if these numbers are true, if this victory is really happening in this way, that it is a remarkable victory. And he said, quote, "I never expected anything like this. It's got to give us some momentum from here." And this victory is especially sweet for John McCain because he started here as a senator from Arizona, relatively unknown in the state of New Hampshire and dramatically underfunded. John McCain's journey from obscurity to contender came with a relentless focus on a single state, New Hampshire.
Yesterday, we had our 114th town hall meeting in the state of New Hampshire.
McCain skipped the Iowa caucuses, focusing almost exclusively on New Hampshire, having the state virtually to himself while his competitors were nearly 2,000 miles away. In the early days, McCain was unknown here, a mere 3% in the polls. But after spending more than 70 days here, more than twice as many as George W. Bush, he emerged as the man to beat. McCain portrayed himself as a reformer in the mold of Teddy Roosevelt, promising to get big money out of politics. A war hero, McCain told voters he was the man best prepared to be commander-in-chief.
There's only one man running for president who knows the military and understands the world, John McCain.
Money helped too. McCain spent about $2 million on television ads. With his tax plan, he turned conventional wisdom on its head. McCain gambled Republicans would care more about paying down the $5.5 trillion debt than scoring a big tax cut.
My dear friends, for the sake of these young folks, don't you think we ought to pay down that debt? Don't you think we ought to do that?
That turned out to be one of the most reliable applause lines of his campaign. The McCain campaign is calling this a wallop and saying the word of the day is iceberg. They say that George Bush is the Titanic who hit the iceberg, and now the sense of inevitability, the sense that he would inevitably be the Republican nominee, is gone, and the opportunity is John McCain's. Back to the anchor desk.
Thank you, Jonathan. Also, Candy Crowley. We've got a couple questions as we look at what is happening tonight. If you're just joining us, John McCain, according to CNN exit polling, wins the New Hampshire primary easily. Jonathan Karl, take us back to the debate here in New Hampshire Wednesday night. How much of McCain's hammering away at the fact that he is a leader, that he does not need training, he does not need further experience, how much of a factor do the McCain people, and indeed the candidate himself, think that this was persuasive with these New Hampshire voters?
They think it was a central factor in their win. In fact, they were, for the last week, hammering away relentlessly on that point, saying John McCain, if you look at the debates, they would say John McCain's the only president on the stage. He's the one with on-the-job training. The candidate himself, McCain, never directly attacked Bush, calling him, he always said, well, I think my friend is prepared as well, George W. Bush, but I'm better prepared. And they thought that was a central factor. And in fact, they thought that when George W. Bush brought his father into this state and put him up on the stage with the candidate, they said that that actually helped McCain because it reminded people that George W. Bush is somebody who got where he is in part because he has a very famous father, and that contributed to that sense that George W. Bush might not be ready for the presidency, but John McCain is. That's what the McCain campaign's been saying.
Candy, any concern at all among the people around Governor Bush that the sort of tried and true Republican strategy of rolling out the establishment, rolling out respected figures in the party may not work as well this year as it has in the past?
Look, we know it's never worked in New Hampshire. This was the template they were bound and determined to use, and so they did. I would argue that they do believe in places like Michigan, where John Engler, the governor, has a huge political machinery in place, that's going to be an advantage. They look at New Hampshire as a bit of an aberration, as most of us do, in terms of how they vote and also how the campaign is conducted. They will point out repeatedly that you can't do 100+ town hall meetings in South Carolina, in Michigan, in those places. Then you do have to rely at least on the structure that's in place. You have not heard any talk that George Bush, the president coming up here, of course with his wife Barbara Bush, was a hindrance to this candidate, certainly because that speaks to the relationship between the two, at least not among the closest advisors to Bush. There are some of those around Bush a little further out of the inner circle that do believe that was a mistake.
That it was a mistake to bring his father into New Hampshire? The accumulation of, here's Judd Gregg, a well-known politician in New Hampshire, here's Jack Kemp, here's the president, that the accumulation of all of that may have, New Hampshireites look at that, and their tendency is always to like the maverick. Their tendency is to want to send a message to the establishment. So in that may have made George Bush seem like an establishment candidate, obviously that hurts.
Candy Crowley. We call it exit polling, but basically it's snooping around polling places waiting for New Hampshireites to come out. The man in charge of that, how did these people vote? Why did New Hampshireites vote the way they did? Bill Schneider.
Bernie, the key to this election has always been independence, we've been told. 100 years ago, they called independents the third sex. Who needs them? Well, a lot of people said McCain needs them. Let's take a look at how independents voted, because they could vote in the Republican primary. They were a third of the Republican primary vote, and they went 3-1 for John McCain over George Bush. So, is that the case? Did independents hand McCain his victory in this primary? Well, get a grip. I hope you're sitting down, Governor Bush, because you just lost registered Republicans. Registered Republicans went for John McCain by 10 points over Texas Governor George Bush. That has to be very unsettling for the Bush campaign, because they thought Republicans, who were 2/3 of the primary voters, they would be secure for Bush. Maybe independents would give them trouble.
If I may, Remember Wednesday night when McCain said to Bush, I can beat Al Gore and you can't, at the debate, yes, when he said, because I can take the case against campaign finance and you can't. That was the first time I remember McCain taking his central issue and aiming it not toward independents and generally, but to Republicans as a political argument. Sounds like it might have had an impact.
Yeah, that's right. And I think McCain, you know, this is a real danger to Bush. You just heard Jonathan Karl say a minute ago, the image they use is the iceberg hitting the Titanic. We did a poll about 6 weeks ago in which we asked people, if John McCain starts winning primaries and beating George Bush, would you still support George Bush? And we discovered Republicans saying that Bush's support would drop by 30 points. They started abandoning ship if they heard that Bush would no longer look like a winner. Well, tonight, he really doesn't look like a winner.
One interesting point about the independents, I went back and I looked at 1996. A third of the Republican vote in the primary in 96 was also independents. They went for Pat Buchanan. It's very interesting to see how independents in one election can do one thing and something very different in the next.
That's right. Independents tend to vote for the anti-establishment candidate. In 1996, that was clearly Pat Buchanan against Bob Dole. In this election, clearly the anti-establishment candidate, John McCain.
Thank you. Bill Snyder. Jeff?
First of our, what we call election shorts this evening, to get a different perspective on this. We want to reflect for a moment on some of the truly important things we've learned about the presidential candidates in this primary campaign. Bill Bradley's childhood nickname was Monster. George W. Bush's favorite comic strip is Peanuts. Gary Bauer's hidden talent is flipping pancakes. 8 years after Bill Clinton answered the boxers or briefs question, we know more personal trivia about these candidates than ever, and certainly more than many of us ever wanted to know. John McCain even weighed in on this issue. Who would he rather be stranded with on Gilligan's Island, Ginger or Mary Ann? For whatever it tells you about his qualifications to be president, his answer, Mary Ann. Back to you, folks.
Thanks for putting it in perspective.
Always keep your eye on the ball.
Just a reminder to our audience that we have called the Republican race already for John McCain, winning easily, substantially. On the Democratic side, we want to state once again, it's a very close race according to our interviews with New Hampshire voters as they were leaving the polling places today. It's one that we're going to be watching, we think, for some time this evening. We'll see just how long. But two exciting races in the state of New Hampshire tonight. Much to look forward to. We're going to take a break, Bernie.
And when we come back, we're going to take you promptly to the Gore and Bradley headquarters, and elsewhere, of course.
CNN's coverage of Election 2000 is brought to you by America's pharmaceutical companies, leading the way in the search for cures. And by Ditech.com, home loan savings direct from the lender.
Our ideas about aging are changing. Prescription medicines are helping to change them. New medicines that help prevent heart attacks and strokes, that reduce the need for surgery and hospital stays. Most of America's seniors have insurance coverage for these medicines, but some of our seniors don't. At America's pharmaceutical companies, we want every senior to have access to prescription medicines so that all our seniors who need them can have them.
So, you've managed to point and click your way into too much debt.
Why not point and click your way out of debt with a second mortgage from Ditech.com? Whether you have equity or no equity, good credit or not so good credit, Ditech has a second mortgage with absolutely no closing costs to help you lower your monthly payments now. So point and click your way out of high-interest, non-tax deductible credit card debt at Ditech.com.
Or call us at 1-800-71-FIXED. Ditech.com.
My dad wouldn't have called this retirement. I mean, who would have...
When do I get to retire from managing my money? Now that I have
Co-trustees.
7 grandkids.
Kind of funny how investing was easier when I didn't have any money.
Titanium bikes are overrated.
It's always thought earning money was the hard part. Keeping it's the real job.
I wonder,
Should we take the income?
should we reinvest?
Thank you, Payne Weber.
A typical day for the IT manager. Everyone wants everything now. Luckily, there's CDW, your direct solutions provider. CDW uses 50,000 top-name products to give you complete systems, including custom configuration and pre-installed software. Why get hung up in work when CDW is here to make life easier? CDW, computing solutions built for business.
United Technologies put $24 million of specialty metals up for bid. Then Free Markets opened the online market. 9 hours later, they'd saved $5 million and developed partnerships with 7 world-class suppliers. Since 1995, Free Markets has led the world in business-to-business online auctions, working in over 50 industries, generating over $2.5 billion in market volume. Free Markets, unleashing the power of online markets.
Welcome back. It appears you might say that the Straight Talk Express has rolled through New Hampshire and left Texas Governor George W. Bush in its wake. On the Republican side, CNN has called in the state of New Hampshire, Arizona Senator John McCain a substantial winner over George W. Bush.
On the Democrat side, Vice President Al Gore and former New Jersey Senator Bradley are locked in a very tight race with 22 delegates at stake. CNN at this hour at 18 minutes past 7 Eastern Standard Time, we say this one is too close to call. John King is at Gore headquarters.
I've been in touch with senior campaign officials at the Gore campaign headquarters. They are counting on their organization, their ground game here in New Hampshire, to pull out a victory. They're also preparing, though, for a bruising 5 weeks. The campaign here in New Hampshire turned bitter and personal in the final days. They expect more of that if Senator Bradley wins or is close here in New Hampshire. Gore campaign expecting a much more aggressive Bradley campaign out of New Hampshire in the next 5 weeks. But as they prepare behind the scenes for a bruising stretch ahead, the candidate himself, the vice president in public, is the voice of confidence.
Coffee, donuts, and talk of the fall campaign. All the Republicans have risky tax schemes that threaten our prosperity. All of them take away a woman's right to choose.
The vice president still faces a primary challenge and will for at least weeks to come, regardless of the New Hampshire results. But focusing more and more on Republicans is designed to convince Democrats it's time to bring the nomination fight to an end.
Hi, thank you very much. Thank you.
Being seen among the people was another piece of Gore's closing strategy here. And this Sunday salvo was scripted after a slip in the overnight polls.
I believe the people of New Hampshire are not going to be fooled by Senator Bradley's last-minute, manipulative, negative, politics-as-usual campaign.
The next big test for the Democrats comes in 5 weeks, March 7th, when California, New York, Ohio, Georgia, and Missouri are among the 15 states holding primaries or caucuses. Bradley has plenty of money for the fight. $8.3 million on hand at the beginning of the year, compared to $5.7 million for the vice president. But Gore hopes to leave New Hampshire with the most valuable asset in politics, momentum, and is hoping he can get back to his early strategy of all but ignoring his opponent.
I'm going to let him decide for himself how he runs his campaign. For my part, I'm going to keep talking about the issues and the future of our country.
And as they wait for the results to come in at Gore headquarters tonight, they are also mulling a new challenge from the Bradley campaign. Senator Bradley now says he wants to debate the vice president once a week heading into those March 7th primaries. For more on the aggressive Bradley strategy and their hopes in New Hampshire, we go now to my colleague Gene Reserve.
John, as you mentioned, a late twist in the Bradley strategy, this proposal for debates before the votes in New Hampshire are even tallied. Officials here are very encouraged by what they are hearing from the exit polls, and at this point, believe me, there's no second guessing of the strategy in New Hampshire.
How about the weather, Senator?
When the contest moved to New Hampshire, the forecast for the Bradley campaign matched the travel advisories. Tough going ahead. But Wednesday, in his final New Hampshire debate, Bradley put on the four-wheel drive.
I just think politics should be a case of belief and not tactics. That it should be a case of saying what you're for, not what you're against. It should be a matter of bringing issues to the fore, not demeaning your opponent.
In the following days, he shifted gears again from defending his own record to criticizing Gore's on campaign finance.
What happened in 1996 was a disgrace.
on abortion rights.
Of the 7 men running for president, only one candidate has been pro-choice for everyone, all the time: Bill Bradley.
It was a high-wire act for Bradley to be more aggressive without falling into the mud he says he disdains in politics. So he resorted to surrogates. The sharpest tongues belong to Senator Bob Kerrey, former Labor Secretary Robert Reich, and former Senator and Governor Lowell Weicker, who tried to peel independent voters away from Gore, and even Republican John McCain.
The only independent thinker and actor here is Bill Bradley.
Unions gave Al Gore a big organizational boost in Iowa, but here the Bradley campaign believes it is holding its own with 1,200 volunteers who have been pamphleting and leafleting and trying to get potential voters out to the polls today. Back to the anchor desk.
John King with Gore campaign, any sense among the Gore people that they're the victim of timing? That is, if they steadily closed a Bradley lead of a couple of weeks ago, they would have been the late finishers, but now even if they win, it looks like Bradley's closed to one wide gap.
Well, they certainly think that Senator Bradley succeeded when he got more aggressive last week in narrowing the gap here and perhaps overtaking the vice president. We'll know that in a few hours. But what they're saying now is that this was Bradley's best state. Independents, as Bill Schneider mentioned, can turn out in the primaries here, and the indications are they did so in good numbers for Senator Bradley. We move ahead now to states where only Democrats can vote. The vice president looking to use his advantages there among organized labor, among elected officials in those states. But as you saw in the report, Senator Bradley has plenty of money. The question now is, can he come out of New Hampshire and organize in the states ahead?
And Gene Meserve, let's put that question directly to you. What John said is correct. Senator Bradley has raised substantial money, but he is now heading into states where he's not going to be viewed as nearly as favorably as he was here in New Hampshire.
Well, what he's hoping is that these debates will help him, I'm sure, let him lay out the differences between himself and Al Gore. He has said that he feels those face-to-face situations are the best place for him to lay out his differences with the other candidate, and he thinks the differences he's been underlining here in New Hampshire have been effective. Those have been the issues of integrity and honesty. He has tied those, of course, to issues like abortion and health care and also campaign finance.
All right, Gene Meserve.
Our pollmeister, Bill Schneider again, on the Democrats, how they voted.
And why in the world is this race so close? Well, you've heard of the gender gap. We have a gender gap for you, ladies and gentlemen. Only this one is between 2 Democrats. Gore says he's the fighter, but look at how men voted. 52 to 47 for Bill Bradley over Al Gore. What's that about? That's about hoops. Bradley, the Hall of Famer, the former New York Knicks basketball star and Olympic gold medalist. And among women, they voted for, college graduates. These are college graduates. Well-educated voters in New Hampshire also voted heavily for Bill Bradley. His pitch was as a visionary, a man who had a cerebral approach to politics, and college graduates, who were a majority of the voters, clearly responded. Now, on the issue of Bradley's style, we have the 1 in 7 primary voters in the Democratic race who decided their vote today, and they voted very heavily for Bill Bradley. Now, that's important because there's been a debate among Democrats. Did Bradley wait too long to start to get tough with Al Gore, to fight back, or was it a mistake? He wanted to keep his image as being above the fray. I think the answer is clearly Democrats responded to Bradley's getting tough and fighting back to Al Gore, because those who waited till the last minute to decide went very heavily for Bradley, and that's what's making this a close race, because Gore has been leading up until now.
The Sunday New York Times Week in Review section, above the fold, a color picture of the shadow of Air Force One preparing to land. What do the results so far tonight say about the shadow of William Jefferson Clinton?
It's a shadow that a lot of voters would like to get out from under. What we're seeing is that voters want change. Look at Democrats. If Bill Clinton was the king of the Democratic Party and Democrats were buying into Clintonism as a philosophy, why are they voting for Bill Bradley? They should be loyal to Clinton's vice president. But he's in a struggle of his life here to survive in New Hampshire. What this suggests is a lot of Democrats, and we'll find particularly liberal Democrats, are very worried. They're unwilling to buy into Clintonism, not because they don't think Clinton has been a success, but because they think the Democratic Party should aspire to do more, which is what Bradley is proposing.
I wonder what Mike McCurry, for example, might think about that.
That's right, and we're going to have a chance to ask him in just a moment. When we come back, we're going to hear from Mike McCurry and Tony Blankley. I would just make one quick point, though, before we go to a break, and that is most of the polls in the state of New Hampshire have closed, about 75%. There are still about 25% of the polls that will be closed at 8 o'clock. And we want to say there are still some New Hampshire voters out there who are making their way to their polling place to vote. And we want to encourage them to go ahead and vote. This election isn't over yet. We'll be right back.
Might decide the whole race in the Democratic voting.
Democrats, boy.